With me is the president of U.S IBC, Atul Keshap, who is no stranger to India, having a lot of connects with India, having served here as well. So, welcome to WION. My first question to you is that we are on the sidelines of the INDUS X, which is seen as an important partnership between the Indian and the American government when it comes to defense. So, if you can talk about this as an ecosystem for the incubation of the defense startups between the two countries?
Well, sure. First of all, greetings to you and your viewers. This is a great time to be working on U.S. India relations. I would argue that our bilateral relationship is at an all-time high. And if you look at all of the various areas where we're working together on technology, on defense issues, on Quad, on the Middle East, Africa, Indian Ocean, things are really great between Delhi and Washington and between our two peoples. So INDUS X is a very exciting element of that. It was launched by us, US IBC, with the two governments at the US Chamber of Commerce in Washington last year. This is the second iteration of that enterprise. And the whole purpose of it is to bring India and the US, INDUS X, to accelerate their defense partnership. So it brings your private sector and our private sector together. And if you look at the exhibit hall upstairs at this hotel, it is filled with US IBC members and SIDM members, Society of Indian Defense Manufacturers, who are innovating in the defense space. If you look at the drones, the underwater surveillance technology, the precision-guided munitions technology, and so much else besides, there's a giant amount of innovation happening in companies you might not have heard of at the private sector level, and we want to accelerate that development because it's good for your deterrence, it's good for our deterrence, it's good for the peace and stability of 1.8 billion free people.
Mm-hmm. So you started by talking about India-US relationship. How do you see the trajectory of this relationship going forward? In last 20 years, this relationship has transformed completely. Today, we have engagement almost in every level possible. So if you can crystal gaze and talk about this relationship.
Well, first of all, let's look backward. We have made tremendous progress between our two countries over the past 25 years. The relationship today bears no resemblance to what it was when I was a young diplomat. We are now global partners, and I would go one step further and say that we are the two pillars of stability on the planet. If you look at your economy, your political system, ours, the talent of your people, the energy and entrepreneurism of our people, we are the pillars of stability and prosperity. So we are invested in seeing the world be stable, peaceful, and prosperous, and ideally democratic. I think that your country has shown itself to be a proven, responsible leader in the Indian Ocean region, in Africa, in the Middle East, in many places around the world. And India upholds global stability. Most Americans respect and admire that. So as you said, let's look into the crystal ball. I see the US and India greatly accelerating their strategic, economic, and technological convergence because the world is so unstable. This is a moment of great geopolitical risk, and the great democracies need to be stable pillars of human civilization. And that's the United States and India.
Let's go back to the defense element of the relationship in terms of what can be achieved. If you can talk about that, because look, co-production is something that India craves for, to use the phrase. What can the Americans give to the Indians so that we can have our own make in India defense?
Well, look, it's got to be win-win, and I think a lot of that is already happening. If you look at the rear empennage of the C-130, it's made in India by a tie-up between American and Indian defense companies, Tata and Lockheed Martin. If you look at the Sikorskys, which are the helicopters that carry the President of the United States, that whole body assembly is made in India. The F-16, F-15 wing is made in India, and much more is going to get made in India as part of a joint American-Indian defense supply chain. I would rather rely on India as part of my supply chain than any other country on earth. And I think for India as well, relying on the United States is the best bet for long-term stability, security, prosperity, and mutual deterrence. Our companies are world-class in their technology. They're absolutely transparent, highest standards of ethics. The process is very regulated in the U.S. so that it could be an open book for anybody to look at. There's no issue of any impropriety. And the technology really is that good. It's been proven again and again to be best in world. So there is an endless opportunity for us to intensify our co-production, co-development. And I think our companies are responding well to the government's vision of Make in India, to the inducements government has given for investments in India. You have world-class Indian companies here who are doing really advanced things. Our companies see that and they want to partner up with them. So if we can have private sector to private sector tie-ups, then I think India and the U.S. together and separately can ensure their defense needs and their deterrent capability without having to rely on anybody else.
What kind of volume you're looking at in terms of defense, in terms of India and the American side, not only having the co-production bit, but in terms of export and import?
So I think the total quantum of defense deals between the U.S. and India went from something very close to zero when I served here as a young diplomat almost 20 years ago to probably in the neighborhood of 25 billion today. So the number is pretty substantial. You have C-17s, C-130s, Apache helicopters, Poseidon P-8s that are patrolling the Indian Ocean. You're going to have the best drones in the world pretty soon. Well, you already have a few, but you're going to have many more. And then, of course, there's the GE 414 engines and much else besides. So India, as its economy grows, as its tax base grows, is going to buy more and more to ensure its defense against, frankly, the same aggressors we're all facing. And as it does so, it may decide that American-made technology is the best, but I think it's going to be a fusion of American and Indian. So I think there's quite a strong opportunity for growth, especially in the private sector to private sector tie-up.
In terms of the regulatory approvals from the American side, how has it been eased for India? We recently saw the US Congress notification regarding a certain deal as well, and there were certain hiccups. We saw certain comments by certain senators as well. Do you think that this is going to be an impediment in future deals, or this is going to be smooth sailing as the relationship strengthens further?
So I mentioned earlier, our defense process is a very open book, and it reflects the balance of powers in our system where the legislative and the executive have to get together and then the deal goes forward. There is a tremendous amount of bipartisan support for India and for the rise of India in world affairs among the people of the United States. And I think you're seeing that with the approvals on, for instance, the GE 414 engines. The congressional notification has now begun for the drone deal. I'm confident it will go through. And that it reflects a feeling that the rise of India in world affairs is good for America. It's good for prosperity and stability. It's good for democracy. I think you can see that in the administration, in the executive branch as well. If you look at the National Security Council, the Commerce Department, the Defense Department, and the State Department, which are the four parts of the bureaucracy that look at deals and whether to approve them or not, everyone I talk to is forward-leaning because they recognize the strategic logic of the long bet that has been made by America on the rise of India.
So my final question to you is India and the US working together in the Indo-Pacific. How do you see that happening? I mean, there's certainly a lot of convergences, but in terms of practical implementation of both governments coming together, if you can just talk about that.
Sure. Well, first of all, we are Quad partners, and it means a lot that we are Quad partners. There's, I think, an almost total commonality of values with regard to the shared maritime domains, freedom of navigation and commerce, the desire for every country in the Indo-Pacific to be sovereign, to be able to make its own choices without anybody else bullying them. That's why we talk about a free and open Indo-Pacific. It is one of the mantras, the shlokas of our diplomatic engagement between Delhi and Washington. And so you're seeing a great deal of military exercises among the Quad partners and with other partners besides, like with France, which is a Indo-Pacific country as well. And it is because of, I think, a desire to ensure that the system of global order that has been good for the prosperity of many countries, including India, survives in the 21st century against some very sharp attempts to subvert that global order, to erode rule of law, to erode peaceful resolution of disputes. And so the U.S. and India are stepping up and saying, with Japan and Australia, these are our values, we stand up for these values, and we will partner with other countries to ensure the perpetuation of those values. So I think the Quad partnership is here to stay. It is getting deeper and deeper between our two countries and with our other two partners, and it reflects an apprehension about what could be lost if those who are opposed to stability and prosperity get their way.
Well, thank you so much, sir, for speaking to WION, as always.
It's been a delight. Thank you very much, Siddhant. I appreciate it. Thank you.
With video journalist Sanjeet Siddhant Sibal for WION in New Delhi.